Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to let you know, we'll start the presentation in about 1 minute. Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll start the presentation in about 30 seconds. An official hello and welcome everyone to today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast, supporting an impactful heat stress prevention program, sponsored by PIP. This is Alan Ferguson, Associate Editor at Safety and Health, and I'll be moderating today's event. Thank you once again for joining us, and before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items. As a disclaimer, the views of today's speakers and organization are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health Magazine. Any mention of a commercial enterprise product or publication does not mean the Council of the magazine endorses those items. After today's presentation, we'll conduct a question and answer session with our speakers. If you have a question, click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question, and press the send button. We welcome your questions at any time during today's event. You don't have to wait for the Q&A to begin. We might not get to every question, but the good news is unanswered questions will be forwarded to today's sponsor. Also, after this presentation, we'll be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey, and I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. Just to let you know, this webcast will be archived, so you can access it after today's live event. To view this webcast and all of our past webcasts, please visit safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events, or you may receive a link in our post-event email. With that, let's introduce our speakers. With us today are Ben Julian and Carrie Schimmelfennig. Ben is the Industrial Safety Marketing Manager at PIP. He has worked for 6 years in the safety industry, conducting market research, offering hazard-driven channel safety solutions, and creating interactive safety tools for distributors and end users. Carrie is a product sales manager at PIP and holds 20 industry-specific OSHA certifications that allow him to guide organizations toward the right safety solutions to keep workers comfortable, productive, and compliant. Carrie has also been selected to serve as an advisor for the A10 heat stress standard for specific industries. Again, we thank you all for tuning into this presentation. Ben, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. And good afternoon to everyone who's tuned in. We appreciate you joining us today for a conversation around heat stress. For those of you who are not familiar with PIP, we're a leading global manufacturer of PPE for many markets, including but not limited to construction, manufacturing, oil and gas, welding, utilities, food safety, and even more. So today we're specifically excited to discuss some of the solutions we offer that can help your company improve and support an overall heat stress prevention program, which we know is something that OSHA is looking for in the event of a related incident. So with that being said, thanks again for joining, and let's get into it. All right. So a quick overview of what we will be covering today. So to start, we'll give a quick glimpse of why all of a sudden there's this huge push to keep workers protected in hot environments. We'll then jump into how OSHA is addressing this issue with their heat stress specific National Emphasis Program, or NEP, also known as. We'll also cover a high-level overview of the new ANSI ASSP A10.50 standard for the construction and demolition industry. Moving forward, we know identification and prevention is key when it comes to heat stress. So we'll cover some symptoms and best ways for workers to self-monitor themselves while working in the heat. From there, we'll cover the importance of hydration at work, which is such a critical component to today's approach for overall heat stress prevention. And then from there, we will jump into a Q&A and answer some of your guys' questions. So excited to get this rolling, and to kick things off, I want to kick it over to Carrie Schimmelfennig, who's our Business Development Manager.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. And thanks a lot for everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to have the opportunity to speak with you about this. So one of the the biggest concerns out there is people are asking, and in safety, one of the biggest things we want to do is explain the why, why we're doing it, why the employee, why we're looking to do this. And the why behind the heat stress has been, OSHA has been looking at this and the worker fatalities. You have 38 worker fatalities over the years, 2,700 cases from days away from work. Okay, 10% of inspections have resulted in citations. And there's other things too. They're starting to realize there's other industries and environments. Okay. So that's really the big why behind it, the focus. Okay. So the other thing too is you want to look at as you look at this, there's primarily considered industries that we know. Common sense tells us they're going to be automatically, construction, oil and gas, agriculture, utilities. They're commonly exposed to the elements outside, so heat stress and things like that. The things that they look at too, though, we got to look at other environments commonly, overlooked. Like you got warehousing, you got metal fabrication, cold storage facilities, okay, and manufacturing in general. And in cold storage, you would think, well, why cold storage? Well, when you're working, even like if you're building up a heat stress, so that's important that's addressed and that's focused on. So that's one of the areas that they looked at too as well, that they're continuing to look at. So with that, they moved into what they do is they saw this, they moved into what they call a national emphasis program. Basically, a national emphasis program that OSHA does is it's to ensure that the employees in high industries or high risk industries are protected. And this particular one was written to protect it for both indoor and outdoor. Now they came out with this in April of 2022, April 8th. And what they did is they added an enforcement component to target specific high areas. Now we saw there, the ones that are commonly knowledgeable, ones they understood that they knew they could go after, but there's other ones, and we'll look further down the road at that a little bit. The focus is the vulnerability of the worker in the outdoor and the indoor environments, and by coordinating efforts with the Department of Labor and Industry and the Labor and Wage and Department of Labor and Wages to get the employees, right size, to get the situation right size for them being exposed to that. Ultimately, the goal behind this is to reduce the elements for the workers, to reduce the exposure, the elements to the heats, the hazards, things like that. OSHA's biggest emphasis is to reduce hazards for their worker. Targeted industries, work sites where employees are not provided with cold water, rest, shade, things like that. Areas for training and acclimatization. Okay, and then the use of enforcement and outreach to employers, and compliance assistance. So there is programs out there. They have the ANSI developed that standard now. It's a guide for you, okay, to help develop those programs. And then increased heat inspections by 100% above a baseline of the average of the fiscal year 2017 through 2021. So that's what the whole purpose of an emphasis focus is. So the Doug Parker gives his people the marching orders that says go out, and I want to emphasize on these areas. That's kind of what this does. They started that back in April, and what they're going to look at. Okay, so when they're coming into your position, do you have a written program in place to attack this or to attack these employees? Does the employer monitor the ambient temperatures and the work exertion means that as the employees are perspiration, they're getting hotter. So and are they monitoring that? Are they doing things to check that? Was there access to water, rest, heat, and heat breaks, things like that, shade? Are you providing that? Was that provided by the employer? Did the employer provide a time for acclimatization? Okay, for reacclimatization back into the element. Okay, from returning workers. Let's say they go to break, sit in an air-conditioned spot. Well, they now have to be reacclimated. Are you allowing that given time? And what's interesting is that most of your outdoor fatalities, they say, according to OSHA website, 50 to 70% of the fatalities occur the first few days for the workers in the hot environments because the body needs time to reacclimate. So that's why they're looking at that. Okay. And then what administrative things? We've got that OSHA hierarchy, right? That hierarchy of protection, okay, and PPE being the last resort. But is there something we can administer? Is there an administrative way? Meaning, can we have, adjust our worker hours like you see in the Midwest or the West and places like that? They'll start them earlier and they have them leave earlier. So they're getting them out of that, okay? And then did the employer try, provide training? education, illness, or education on heat illness and signs and how to report these things and how to the importance of hydration and prevention of getting heat stress and heat stroke. And again, just like anything in safety, educate is very important. Okay, and that's what helps us. And as we said a few minutes ago, so the high heat areas that the industries that they focused on, you'll see there in table 1, the NAC codes. So they started at bakeries, tortilla manufacturing, things like that, sawmills, wood prevention, petroleum, coal products manufacturing, basic chemical manufacturing. Okay, so they're manufacturing industries you're seeing under that NICS code. Okay, so the next NICS codes you see there, they focus on the construction industries. They have some high risk areas that they see residential building, non-residential building and construction, obviously utility systems and constructions, highways, the tars and things like that. The heat coming up from that. Okay, and then other heavy civil or engineering and construction, things like that. You'll also see, which is interesting, is the next code there for what they call local knowledgeable industries. Okay, so industries like vegetable or melon, so agriculture, farming, which we talked about in the beginning. Agriculture is one of the focuses, a part of this. But the other thing you look at is postal workers. Okay, UPS guys, FedEx guys. I mean, you just saw here there was a FedEx guy who dropped from a heart attack not too long ago. A family, the guy ended up helping him from the heat stress. Employment services, temporary employment services, things like that. Okay, and then restaurants, areas where there's the ability to have a high heat risk hazard. Okay. And so in doing that, they've come across, and I happen to have the pleasure and the honor of sitting on the A10 Standards Committee, and part of the A10 Standards Committee is the construction and demolition. They decided to focus on this, and they put .50. And the standard here was it's a heat stress management and construction and demolition operation. It offers a guidance, okay, on a protection for the workers. And explains how to reacclimate the workers. It gives you some high heat conditions. It provides, again, this is a guidance. The standards is a guidance. Okay, this isn't an OSHA act or anything like that, but this is a guidance to help you to eliminate any issues through that NEP, from getting a visit, so to speak. And if you look at some of the key elements on it, you'll see that the methods for modern for reacclimatization for new and returning workers. There's different environments. How do you acclimate, the workers? How are you doing that? The methods for the assets, or for the workers to be exposed to the heat stress. What do you have? What types of things are you providing for them? The requirements for providing potable water. And in certain instances, electrolytes for employees. Okay, so whatever the circumstances may be. And again, this is a guidance. You're going to have to drill it down to what your industry, what you're doing specific, your activities, right? Department of Energy action plan for heat-related emergencies. There's places where you can find stuff. Schedule of rests and breaks, things like that. Who is exhibiting heat stress symptoms? So things like that you're going to learn. Okay, designated shaded areas for the workers, so they'll know. When you have people come to a site, here's where we muster if there's an issue, if we have to evacuate. Okay, so now you put this into your training aspect for orientation. Hey, here's a place where we shade. Okay, things like that. Okay, identify the site, and try to create administrative controls, including things like proper PPE and other high risk heat stress things like that. Trying to just develop administrative controls to see if we can eliminate or figure a way to adjust that. Even switch workers to minimize workers' times exposed to it. So swap workers out or things like that. And then methods how you monitoring the workers, the heat strain, the probability through a buddy system. Buddy system is the best way to do it. Most of your employees know day in and day out how their colleagues act physically, how they talk. So they'll see things. They'll start to pick up things. And Ben will get a little bit more granular on the things that you'll be able to see there. Okay. And then identify participation, identification of the employees and participation and responsibilities. So you got to identify them. You got to let them know what they're responsible for. There's an employer responsibility here. As adults, we all have responsibilities. Okay. And then the heat stress training on the policies and procedures of the heat stress prevention, educating your people. That's part of that standard. And so it's a guide again, and it doesn't make you, have to do it. So,
Carrie, I just want to double down on that too. These are all listed in the PDF of the standard. These are things that should be included in your written heat stress program. So again, like Carrie said, we're going to go deeper into some of these things as we go along here. Specifically some of the self-monitoring tips, condition assessments, PPE and hydration solutions. But I just want to mention it is in your best interest to reference this A1050 document if you're looking to enhance or create your written program. And again, we'll get into these things a little bit deeper as we move along. I just wanted to chime in there.
Yeah, beautiful. And then you'll see Ben's going to jump in here and give you some of the, as we talked about, some of the.
Yes. Yeah. So regarding heat stress versus heat exhaustion, there is a difference. And regardless of whichever one's occurring, it's important that employees are aware of the signs of each in order to help each other out, right? We've heard the buddy system approach, and knowing the heat exhaustion, knowing the signs of that, it's part of staying accountable to our buddies. So as you can see here, heat exhaustion includes dizziness, fainting, excessive sweating, rapid and weak pulse, nausea, or vomiting, cool or clammy skin, and muscle cramps. So the main difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke is it's similar symptoms, but it's worse, right? So we see throbbing headaches. That excessive sweat during heat exhaustion phase, that's now turned to no sweating at all, which is a very bad sign. That means the body all of a sudden cannot cool itself. It's exhausted all of its energy. That weak pulse turns into a strong pulse because our heart's now in the fight or flight mode. The skin's turned red. And the most telling sign of heat stroke is workers will lose consciousness, which if a worker is alone and loses consciousness in the heat, that will result in a very bad ending that no one wants. So again, it's simple, but educating your workforce on these signs and symptoms can be the difference between getting them some hydration, rest, and shade immediately versus the alternative bad ending. All right. So for this slide, I just want to say, first thing in the morning, it's critical to know what the environment's going to be like out there for workers. Or in other words, we know it's going to be hot, but how hot? And you can see here the National Weather Service, the heat advisory chart, which actually breaks down what the temperature really feels like when you account in that humidity percentage. So these cautionary levels are a great indication of how to kick in the different, quote unquote, phases of your heat stress prevention program. Your company might have specific methods to mitigate heat stress. Maybe it's mandated cooling PPE worn during specific times of the day or based on that heat index or something like that. I know for construction, Carrie mentioned this. I know some road crews, they'll work during the nighttime just to alleviate the effects of the sun, if the schedule allows it. But you can see here on the right side of your screen, we included a picture of a phone, and that's because OSHA and NIOSH have released a great app that allows you to see the heat index at any time of the day based on your location. So you can see up there, Pennsylvania, but anywhere you are, it'll pick up your location. Definitely a great hack there that I recommend. The app shows you the symptoms that can occur during those times to a worker based on the index point. And there's first aid and preventative tips. So again, I strongly advise downloading the app and to be diligent of, what the day is going to look like, what are workers going to face, maybe even the morning of. Just make sure they're prepared to know what they're going to be facing the next day. All right. So we talked about self-monitoring, right? We're our own vigilantes in the heat, and that's the most important thing. So how can workers self-monitor themselves throughout the day to be sure they're remaining safe and cool while working these strenuous jobs? Well, OSHA has set a threshold of 70 degrees Fahrenheit or higher while working at loads greater than 500 calories per hour. Now, obviously, different workers are going to burn calories at different rates. It depends on the application. How much does the worker weigh? How much do they sweat? How much sweat do they produce? So on. But a few key indicators that can be monitored include, first and foremost, it's our heart rate. So on a hot day, while subject to heat, whether indoors or outdoors, workers' heart rate will pump harder and faster to circulate 2 times as much blood each minute compared to a cooler day. Sweating, it can strain the cardiovascular system. It's good, it cools us down, but it can strain our heart. The essential minerals we lose, like sodium, magnesium, potassium, and more, these are used by our body's vital organs, like the heart, to function properly. So losing these essential minerals throughout the workday can definitely cause a rise in heart palpitations. And if the heart can't keep up, that's when heat stroke occurs and other bad things like heart attacks if it continues. So Some other ways to self-monitor are through monitoring the body's total water loss, which we'll cover later on how to most effectively gauge that, as well as oral temperature by using a simple clinical thermometer after a period of work. So if an oral temperature is measured after a work period, it's got to be done before any water is drank. And if that number is 98 degrees Fahrenheit or over, that's too high. That indicates that work cycles have to be shortened by 1/3 in between breaks. So again, teaching workers, educating workers on these procedures, making them their own vigilantes, that can be a huge difference in your program and the difference between a safe day or a recordable. Okay. So as we move on here, just thinking back to the A1050 standard, the standard actually says PPE that facilitates cooling can be used to cool a worker as long as it does not create a greater hazard. So with that being said, it's important that we know which types of cooling technologies, what they do, in order to select the best PPE option for your team. And it might even be down specific to the application. So starting on the top left, phase change cooling. Phase change cooling packs are essentially filled with an engineered liquid, frozen and packed inside of a moisture wicking vest to be worn against a base layer garment like a t-shirt or a white tee. This vest is going to transfer the most noticeable cooling sensation to the worker out of all four of the technologies you see on your screen. I'm sorry, I think am I frozen here? Sorry, can you guys hear me?
We hear you loud and clear, Ben.
All right, I thought I was frozen there for a second. Wanted to make sure. All right, so start on the top left. We mentioned the phase change cooling can go over your t-shirt and be worn right against as a base layer. It's filled and frozen with engineered liquids. That's what's going to give you the most noticeable cooling sensation to the worker out of all four technologies you see on your screen. And the ultimate goal with this type of product is regulate body temperature while workers are working. So not just on breaks. So it's important that these phase change cooling wearables are worn underneath any type of high vis clothing because we want to remain visible. We don't want to block out any visible clothing that we're wearing. We know that refers to other ANSI standards. But to the right, evaporative cooling technology comes in the form of neck wraps, bandanas, towels, sleeves, and more. So these products feature specialty cooling fibers that should be drenched in cool or cold water and then put on so that the water can slowly evaporate from the wearable. Again, this is being worn while working, not just while workers are participating in that water rest and shade period. And that slow evaporation is what provides workers with a cooling sensation. And these products work great as long as water is accessible and workers are okay with getting a little wet. If by chance the wearable is not drenched in water, it still can provide that evaporative cooling effect just by evaporating sweat from the worker, but the worker is going to have to be sweating at a pretty heavy rate for this to be noticeable. Absorptive technology, this is just how it sounds, right? These products come in hard hat liners, sweatbands, balaclavas, and more, and they simply absorb sweat in critical areas. So we think of, near our eyes where sweat can affect our vision. That can affect our vision, our comfort, even our productivity. So these products are great for workers that may not be exposed to a ton of sunlight outdoors, but still sweat and are constantly removing their PPE to remove that sweat, because we know that taking off that PPE on the job can be very dangerous because anytime it's removed, there's risk of injury and you might not see it coming. So these absorptive products can support wearer acceptability, and they're overall just convenient for any workers that have to wipe sweat continuously. And then lastly, sun protection. So sun protection comes in hard hats, neck shades, and more, and they're designed to block out the sun's harmful rays, which can not only cause heat stress and other forms of discomfort, but they can also negatively, long-term, have a long-term negative effect on our skin, especially for workers that are working outdoors for years and years. A lot of these products that you see are compatible with hard hats, being that they're neck shades. They're designed to they're designed to protect your neck, ears, and kind of up top. But again, they're compatible with other pieces of PPE. And an important thing to keep in mind when considering these technologies is how long does it take them to provide coolness to the wearer? How long do they activate? And I mean specifically, I say this for our phase change cooling and evaporative cooling solutions. So to help identify this, you'll see on PIP packaging and spec sheets, and even some other organizations will post they'll post their activation times. So that just really tells you how long is this product going to take to provide that cooling and be effective to the wearer. So overall, if your company's does not currently provide heat stress PPE, it's definitely an effective route to take to increase wearer acceptability and aid in regulating body temperature. Again, we want to keep workers comfortable in hot environments, and this is a great way to support that. All right. So next up, we're going to jump into the topic of hydration. Hydration is critical, right? Hydration is critical when we're talking about doing all that we can to prevent heat stress. Yes, wearables are great to provide coolness from the outside, but it's actually what we put into our bodies that can have the biggest impact on daily performance and safety in hot environments. So you see the proof on the screen here. It's pretty eye-opening, but our bodies consist of 60 to 70% water, right? So hydration can affect our physical and cognitive abilities, which makes the next point even more alarming, but true, that 50 to 60% of workers show up to work in a dehydrated state. So just by sleeping in an air-conditioned room, our bodies have used the liquids from the day prior to help support simple daily things like cell movement and organ function overnight. Also noteworthy to mention is our brain is one of those organs in our bodies that's primarily made of water. So the more water that is drawn away from these critical organs like the brain, that's going to result in that decrease in cognitive ability. And workers are now not thinking or processing things at their highest potential in crucial moments, which can affect other workers. So, and then lastly, workers can sweat up to 84 fluid ounces per hour. Again, that depends on the size of the worker, how hot it is outside, and the rate they sweat at. But regardless, these loss in fluids, they have a much bigger impact than we think. All right. So what are the effects of workers experiencing this loss of sweat and fluids? Well, just at a 1% increase in dehydration, our heart rate increases 4 beats per minute. So we said that our heart's going to start, speeding up and working harder. 4 beats per minute, which is a pretty considerable, increase. We briefly covered this earlier, but just to reinforce, our blood is made up of approximately 80% water. So as our bodies are losing water through sweat, this means that our blood is losing water as well. It's becoming thicker. It's becoming more viscous. And that doesn't sound bad, but thicker blood requires more power from your heart to pump throughout your body. So that increased power demand means that the body is going to use more energy. It's going to tire out quicker, and it's adding that unnecessary strain. So I could go on and on. There's a lot of science behind it, but I just like to share this when describing the importance of water intake, because it's not just for our coolness and comfort, but it's for the vital function of our vital organs within our body. For every 2% increase in dehydration, we know the blood is thicker and the heart is working harder. Now you'll start to experience a 30% decrease in aerobic performance. And you ask, why is this? Well, we explained what happens to our blood, and that same blood has to run through a key organ that supports our aerobic performance, which is our lungs. So when the blood vessels in our lungs become thickened, narrowed, or blocked, it becomes extremely harder for blood to flow through those vital organs. And like the lungs, this means higher blood pressure, shortened inhalation, exhalation cycles, and a harder time to convert that oxygen to support a healthy blood flow. So again, that we've talked about the brain, heart, lungs. Now, as we jump to a 3% increase in dehydration, our reaction times are slowing down quite a bit, equivalent to having a 0.08 blood alcohol content. So we know that's the legal limit to operate a motor vehicle. So if you're a heavy machinery operator and you're dehydrated, you're now putting other workers at risk, and you may not even know it. So pretty impactful there. Just 3% decrease in hydration can cause those effects. So with all that stuff covered, let's talk about the best way to monitor and maintain our hydration levels. And the best way to do that is examining our urine color. And you see the chart there on the left of your screen. That shows the color of urine, and where it falls in the rehydration calls to action. So this is kind of an unconventional conversation, talking and think about your urine color all day, but it really is the best indicator as an employer to educate your employees. And it's even useful to have things like posters that can help workers identify a dehydration color and support this, again, supporting the overall self-monitoring process. We mentioned more than half of workers show up to work in a dehydrated state. So to best combat that, it's important that some type of hydrating fluid is drank within 1 hour of waking up. That's going to restore the fluids that we lost overnight. Usually a good tip is drink 1 cup of water before bed, 1 cup right as we wake up, and a cup or a bottle of water on our way to work. Speaking of work, the morning and evening hours, caffeine and alcohol are counterproductive when it comes to hydration. So if coffee or an energy drink is your go-to in the morning, it's recommended to add a cup of water to match that caffeine you intake. So 1 cup of water, whether it's Monster, Red Bull, whatever it is, always match it 1 and 1 to a cup of water. And same thing for the night before. If an alcoholic beverage was consumed the night before, it's best to implement that same practice 1 to 1. So again, just trying to keep our hydration levels up. And then, of course, during the work day or really any day, to maintain hydration, it's recommended that a 27 fluid ounce bottle or jug of water is sipped on and refilled about every hour for the day. So again, it doesn't have to be a 27 fluid ounce bottle of water, but the ratio is 27 fluid ounces every hour. And that's even for light duty applications. So if workers are sweating heavily while performing, the heavy duty tasks, which is in most cases while working in construction, 1 cup of a hypotonic electrolyte mix should even be thrown into the mix for every 3 cups of water we drank. So, and I say that you're probably wondering what hypotonic means. Hypotonic is it's a solution with low tonicity. So that means it has a lower concentration of salt and sugars than our blood does. And therefore, hypotonic hydration drinks are absorbed into our bodies at a faster rate. So compared to other options like hypertonic and isotonic, hypotonic is the most effective at promoting the flow of water into the cell as fast as possible. And that is exactly what our bodies need when we're dehydrated, right? It's that rapid replenishment of hydration to our blood, to our vital organs via the water and minerals that we've lost. So in conclusion, water is great for the start of the day, but a hypotonic electrolyte-based hydration drink is what's going to promote our cells really hanging on to those fluids. All right. So moving on. So we keep mentioning essential vitamins and minerals that we're losing through sweat. This strikes up really the question of the presentation, right? Does water alone really support a true hydration program? And based on the formulas engineered to keep the highest performing athletes in the world hydrated, science is telling us water alone does not cut it. Not saying that water should not be drank throughout the day, but these new electrolyte drinks are what's accelerating our cells and our organs to absorb the water that they need. So on your screen, you'll see the most popular components that formulate an effective hydration drink that are used by athletes. And let's face it, these days, industrial athletes are rightfully so deemed that because they're performing athletic movements and demanding movements daily. So what components should we look for? And it starts with electrolytes. There are two main minerals that make up an electrolyte, compose an electrolyte. So sodium is key in helping cells retain water, and magnesium, which helps bind the fluids to the cell in tandem with sodium. So these two minerals are essential to help keep workers hydrated at the highest level possible. And that goes with drinking water throughout the day. So, and also electrolytes aid in the prevention of muscle cramping. They have that potassium in the makeup. So magnesium, sodium, potassium, that's huge for workers who experience muscle cramping or tightening throughout the day. And that's going to happen in hot environments. Amino acid is the second component you see in the middle. And amino acids are essential in body recovery. So they are the building blocks for protein, which actively lessens muscle fatigue, builds muscle during and after work. So weightlifters are actually notorious for drinking formulas with amino acids, and that's to lessen the overall soreness and wear and tear of their muscles. That's what keeps their next lift feeling as good as their last. So but really, amino acids are very effective at breaking down the lactic acids that cause soreness. And this can keep workers feeling good throughout the week, keep them a little bit more productive and just feeling good, when they're, again, performing these really demanding tasks. And lastly, you see vitamins. So we know vitamins are crucial in supporting a healthy immune system and metabolism. So employees don't want workers missing work due to illness. We know absences can directly result in loss of productivity, but really workers don't want to miss work because of being sick. So again, these three components are what's going to really drive better hydration, better energy, increased focus, and enhance productivity and lessen the chance of heat stress on the job. All right. So if your company does not currently implement an advanced hydration formula, we want to take a minute here to introduce Thorst. Thorst is an advanced hypotonic hydration formula. It's designed to hydrate hard workers. It's got everything that we just mentioned that's critical components within these drinks, these beverages. Excuse me. And these are available in powder shots, solo shots that can be added to 16.9 fluid ounce bottles of water. And they're also offered in freeze pop styles. We call them freeze shots, but you can see there the freeze shots actually have a really cool packaging. They actually are broken in half rather than cut with scissors. And that's because it's very effective in a buddy system, right? If the buddies go to get a rest and hydrate, they can easily rip one of these apart and kind of share one and hydrate together. But Thorst is sugar-free, caffeine-free, has all the essential components that we mentioned, and it was actually created by an Olympian athlete. So really the biggest takeaway here is I want to make the point again back to the ANSI ASSP A1050 standard. Water, rest, and shade has always been the traditional motto, but now low sugar energy electrolyte-based beverages, are being mentioned in the new standard. It's actually written. So it says that they should be available by employers to employees, and this is specific for employees working heavy-duty jobs over 2 hours or longer. So, and then one other point I want to make is I just want to mention this because we get this question a lot. Intake volumes of electrolyte-based drinks will vary based on what the product is, personal factors, environmental factors. But the general recommendation is 1 electrolyte beverage for every 3 cups of water. So we say, for Thorst, whether it's a solo powder shot or a freeze shot, no more than 6. So that could be 3 solo shots and 3 freeze shots. It just can't add up to over 6. And again, that's going to be between every 3 cups of water. All right, Kerry.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it. And the other thing too we have to take into consideration is workwear. We have protective clothing should be provided and used to maintain a sanitary workspace, reliable condition, and when hazards are present in the workspace. So we don't want to take a mitigate one risk and create another risk. Okay, so we need to be cognizant of that. And one of the ways you can do that is different technologies that's out there in the market today for the different types of workwear that they have. Workers' pain points that they've come with the garments and things are, they're heavy, bulky, risk of movement. Okay, fabric to traps the body heat. Okay, so it doesn't give it a breathability, which causes be heavy again, movement causing a stress or an additional weighing down the garment. Okay, and then the fit is not doing what it's supposed to do. It will not breathe. It won't give you the satisfaction to cool you down. The other thing is, if it's too loose, you don't want to create a snag point or a drag point or a pinch point or a catch point. Okay, and then fabric should retain, that retain odor, resulting in frequent laundering. So you want to make sure you're looking at technologies like, PIP has a technology that we have that we use, a cross airflow product that it's a lighter weight fabric. Okay, it's got breathability through it. We've got breathability through the reflectivities. So the retroreflectivity remains the same, but yet it has breathability through it. There's technologies where for the armpits and areas where there's heavier areas, that they may have issues. Okay, are there's points in there, and it's designed for that type of an environment. The fit is definitely designed to fit better, and there's moisture management in there. Moisture management is obviously the key, because that moisture, like we talked about, if you don't have the right garment, that moisture is going to build up on that garment and create another stress, that create that heat stress to escalate that work. Obviously, if you're working, as Ben had talked about with the worker, as he escalates, he's going to sweat more, sweat more. Well, we don't want that sweat to stay on, because that's going to create another situation where maybe a heart situation or things like that. So with that being said, I think Ben, you're up next, right, buddy?
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Yeah, apologies. I know there's been some frozen screens on Carrie's part, my part, but we're near the end here. Really, we've gone over a ton of information here. Again, we thank you guys for your time. Just wanted to kind of touch base and kind of do a full circle reminder here of what we discussed. So we discussed some high level stuff about the OSHA NEP, about the new ANSI ASSPA 10.50 standard. I think the biggest takeaway here is there are solutions out there available to support your heat stress program, right? I mean, there are going to be some administrative procedures that you work in and cater to your company or your organization. But I think a big takeaway here is there are PPE solutions and hydration solutions out there to support your overall program. So we talked about heat stress wearables. Again, these are designed to cool the body, maintain the core body temperature to a safe body temperature, and really just keep workers comfortable and productive in their environment. We talked a little bit about hydration, and again, we talked about, is water alone really cutting it? Water is going to be something that you still use in your day-to-day activity, but it's that electrolyte-based formula that's going to help your cells, your blood, everything in your body effectively and rapidly maintain those fluids. And then we touched base a little bit about heat-friendly workwear, which really is overlooked, right? We want to make sure we're selecting workwear that caters to our overall heat stress program. Make sure we're not picking, garments that are too heavy, they're not breathable. Today, you'd be amazed at the technologies out there and how they're enhancing the breathability without sacrificing any durability or quality. So we just like to always close up to say, at PIP, we consider ourselves a one-stop shop for these things. I know there are a lot of options out there, but we take pride that we have kind of the 360-degree approach to the solutions you need. And we've got, like I mentioned, over 100 safety professionals across the U.S. So we are more than willing to help you and guide you towards the right solution to your team and make sure that you're staying compliant and comfortable this summer, because we know it's a hot one. So with that being said, thank you guys very much. Carrie, I don't know if you had anything else, but I think we're ready.
No, I'm good. I think we're good. We're running any questions or anything like that.
Well, thank you so much to you both for sharing your insights with us. And before we start the Q&A, we want to remind everyone of the evaluation survey we're asking you to complete. The survey will open in a different screen after this webinar. And your input is important because it does help us improve our future webcast. And as a reminder for our attendees, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If we don't get to your question, all answers questions, again, will be forwarded along to our speakers. Yeah, so let's get to some questions. Have any studies been done on the intensity of sunlight incident upon workers and can affect the heat index and chance of heat stress? Relevant factors that come to mind: cloud cover, sun angle. Obviously, stronger sun raises risk, but any quantified correlations done that one could base specific safety planning around?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, us personally, we have not done any studies. I'm sure there's some type of study out there based on the factors that you just mentioned on how the sun really does affect that overall heat index. But again, I would just say, as you know, the simple yet most effective way, I mentioned that app. I would say base your activities, your overall heat stress program is going to have phases, right? You might kick in heat stress PPE when that heat index reaches a certain level. Again, I think the most important thing to do as a safety professional is know what's coming the day before, the morning of, be prepared, have those phases ready to kick into activation, make sure that workers are ready. And again, that might be with some of the stuff we talked about today or some other remedies, but that app I think is a really, really, really good reference to base your phases of your program off of.
Our next question: how does acclimatization and temperature indoors work for office workers?
You want me to take that, Ben?
Sure.
So acclimatization indoor office workers, if you go out into 90-degree weather on lunch or things like that, obviously you want to make sure when you're going out into that weather, you're getting acclimatized. So, I mean, if you're in an office all day long, again, you're going to, from your car, things like that. So we don't want a stress or a heat stress situation to occur while you're walking to the car, going to the parking lot.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, the A1050 standard, although it is for construction and demolition, there are tables that reference kind of specific percentages of exposure to outdoors to that heat index that workers should kind of build their way up to based on the days. So definitely a good reference there.
Our next question: is there anything that can be used with safety helmets to provide sun protection?
Gary?
There are sunshades. There are all different types of. There's neck shades. There are all different types of accessories that they have available. If you go to PIP's website, you can see and put in there sun protection or heat stress protection. You'll see in there. There's cooling pads that can go inside and that the Velcro inside the helmet. So there's technologies out there, and every day there's new technologies being looked into and developed. So yes, to answer your question, there is.
Someone asked to discuss the recently approved Cal OSHA heat stress standard. And if you have any more information on that.
Well, we wouldn't. That's a state. So in other words, that Cal OSHA would be a state. We're only talking about the ANSI 10 and then the OSHA itself.
Okay.
Where Cal OSHA would be a state issued standard.
Our next question: someone asked, my pump operators need to wear a Tyvek suit. Is there anything that they can use instead?
I know from a heat stress perspective, there are FR rated cooling vests. So if you could somehow, if you want to integrate that into your Tyvek suit, or if that, if it's FR protection you need, there are different variations of cooling products out there that can cater to whatever the hazard may be. I'm not so sure about electrical, but I know FR, there are options.
My recommendation would be to reach out to us, and we could have one of our people walk you through what you're doing, and then we can make the recommendations, because the Tyvek suits can apply in a manner of different jobs.
Yes.
Our next question: do you have any opinions related to using the SKC heat stress monitors for the close observation piece?
No, I don't have any.
Our next question: do you have a written program for heat stress?
We do not. We our team can go on and assess your hazards and help you implement PPE solutions to help you support your program. It's important if you're going to write a program to do it with a certified professional. So that's written right in the standard. But again, we can support if you have that written program, or you have one, or you're building one out. We can certainly go on site, take a look at maybe some solutions that will cater best to your crew and the application you guys are doing.
Someone asked, can you discuss NIOSH heat stress standards and guidance?
We would have to, if they would like to email us, we can get with our R&D team and see what we can send over.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to look at that.
Someone in the chat asked, wait, hold on. Do you have any experience implementing the ACGIH standard for heat stress?
No.
I do not know. Again, if they want to email us, we've got a whole R&D team that works with these organizations. So we may not have an answer right now, but we can certainly look into it.
Another question. What is the purpose of the A1050 standard?
The purpose of the standard is it's a guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Kerry. I was just going to say it provides guidelines to your written program. So if you have one or you're looking to create one, that's really your step one, is to take a look at that document and start laying out some processes that cover all those guidelines.
Our next question, are there first aid kits specifically made for heat stress incidents?
There are some that they're developing now, and there's some that I've seen that they're making their heat stress response kits.
Yes.
So there is technology now that they're putting into them. Yes, based off the standard, they're taking the technology from the standard and again, the standard's a recommendation, and they're applying that to manufacturers. Some manufacturers are looking to do that.
Yeah, and I'll say that I know PIP as a company, we're going to be coming out with one in the next couple months, and yeah, there are specific kits for heat stress, and like any first aid situation, heat stress, it's about availability. So smaller kits in more frequent areas, it applies just like a regular first aid kit. So these heat stress kits are perfect to kind of put in specific spots, so they're always available in times of an emergency.
Someone in the chat asked, the forthcoming OSHA proposed rule for heat stress, is that going to be for general industry, construction, multiple industries?
My assumption would be it'll be for everybody, but I mean, OSHA's going to come out again. They're as you saw when we showed you in this, and we kind of just touched on. And again, we're not OSHA, but they're going to look at all industries, because there's been a serious issue here over the years. You saw the fatality. So.
Another question, any advice on how to kind of to promote a buddy system on job sites?
I would just say look for people who work in the same area, do the same thing, and people that are going to kind of be working in the same areas together, that can be vigilantes, for each other.
Kerry, I mean, the purpose of the buddy system is because the people that know the person and know what they're at, how they act, how they, so if they start to see them get sluggish in their speech, slower in their work activity, then they realize there's something wrong, and that could be caused because of the heat, the heat exhaustion or something like that. Then it showed you the symptoms. So that's the purpose of the buddy system. So you would kind of want to get people, to Ben's point, that are working together or working the similar jobs.
We have another question. Do electrolyte beverages need to be provided instead of water?
They are referenced in the new standard. Like I said, they're it's for heavy duty workers who are performing that task at 2 hours or more. It does state that an employer should provide an electrolyte beverage for an employee. But again, choosing the right one, it does, it matters. There's different variations. There's sugar-free, non-sugar-free. It does depend on some personal factors and environmental factors. But yes, it is mentioned in the new standard, not in replacement of water, but to support the retention of water.
you you spoke briefly about cold environments. Are heat stress symptoms similar at all to those of cold stress?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, there'd be some similar symptoms. You would have the symptoms in the cold stress as you sweat, like we were talking about in the warehouse. If you're wearing heavy refrigerated wear when you're unloading or loading a truck, depending upon their work exertion in higher states or in northern states in the country where you're plowing, let's say, or shoveling, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, you would definitely have that. That's the one of the things we're looking at.
Yeah, and the hazards are similar, maybe not so much in the effect of sun rays, but like Carrie mentioned, if you're wearing a heavy insulated garment, you're performing heavy tasks, you're definitely going to sweat. You're going to lose those essential minerals, those liquids, and so yeah, there are similar hazards, just maybe not so much sun related.
Someone brought up a good point in the chat, I believe, that the OSHA proposed rule is currently under review by the White House's Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, or Office of Management and Budget. So it should be appearing sometime in the near future, in the next couple of months, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. So once again, as a reminder, I'll say your opinion: shall sugary drinks be avoided?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll also reading up on the standard. It does say to avoid sugary or caffeine drinks. Now, again, it really does depend. There are sugar options out there, not so much high sugar like you'd see in soda, but Thorst is sugar free. I know a lot of other options on the market are sugar free. Again, it really depends on the personal factor there.
So
It was
another
person.
question. You spoke about mobile apps to monitor heat. Could you suggest which some ones to suggest, or do you say which ones you suggest?
Yeah, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the OSHA NIOSH Heat Index app.
Well, it's NIOSH. There's NIOSH and CDC. So if you go into NIOSH, they have great resources from apps and things like that. They have a great app there.
Someone's asking, can you share or discuss the flow charts and checklists?
So that's going to be included in the A1050 document. Those checklists,
Okay.
those are those essential list of components we mentioned.
Right. That's going to be in the document for guidance. So that would be the best referral back to the document.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. As a reminder to our attendees, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to click the Q&A button on the bottom of the screen. If we don't get to your question again, all unanswered questions will be forwarded along to our speakers. And while we wait for any remaining questions, any final thoughts that each of you like to share?
I wanted to circle back on the NIOSH question. I'm actually on the CDC site and the NIOSH site, and they do have some information on reporting and some other research they've done. So if some of the person that did ask that, I didn't want them to go away with no information. So if you go to the NIOSH site, and click in heat stress, it tells you there's some reports in there.
Yeah, and just as I guess a final remark, again, thank you for everyone tuning in. We know this is a hot topic, no pun intended, but it was a pleasure to kind of have a conversation today. Thanks for all the questions at the end. And again, if your company's in need for any hazard assessments to support your heat stress program, please feel free to reach out to us at pipusa.com. Our team would be happy to help your team.
Someone in the chat asked, any experience with wearable sensors as far as sweat or skin temperature?
We don't have any particular today, but there is technology that they're looking into.
Yes. Yeah, there are technologies out there.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm just seeing if there's any more questions. It does not look like it. Would you care if I wrap this up?
Sure thing.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. We'd like to thank Ben Julian, Carrie Schimmelfennig, the entire team from our sponsor, PIP, and of course, all of you who joined us today. Take care and have a safe day.